Hey everybody, Rob Live here, and I want to address something right off the bat because my guest here called me out. She's like, "I know we're gonna do a podcast today. Is it really gonna be live? Like, because your name is Rob Live." So I'm going to explain that briefly to you guys. Rob Live is a moniker that occurred when I used to have a taste testing food and site, and I would be on Facebook and I say, "This is Rob Live at the Fresno Fair," or "Rob Live different places," but this is not actually live, so I hate to break it to you guys. Eventually, it will be. So we're going to edit this thing, make it all pretty. We're going to fix my hair. But today we have, I don't even want to say special guest. I want to say extraordinary. Can we use that word, extraordinary? And you're going to hear her story today. And one of the things I love about our next guest is her transparency and the courage to be able to just tell it like it is, which is very refreshing in a, what we call it, a PC world. So without further ado, this is Rob Live and One Take Films with Christy Camara. Did I say it right?
Camara.
Oh, Christy.
Close enough.
We're going to fix this. Christy Camara. Hey, Christy.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So we're going to start with a little reference here. See, Christy is like, she's a 90s kid. And so when we talk about all the jobs she's had, we have to reference in living color. So I want to start by listing off Christy's jobs throughout her life. Well, number one, first and foremost, right now she's an author, and we'll talk more about this book as well. But here is the book, Can I Still Be Funny After My Son's Murder? Yes, we will get into that. Want to make sure you guys get a good shot of that. That's on Amazon right now. Christy, is there anywhere else we can purchase this book besides Amazon?
BarnesandNoble.com has it available as well.
Barnes and Noble. Now, does Barnes and Noble still have like buildings?
They still have buildings, but my book is not
in the building.
Buildings.
Okay,
not
so
yet.
Not yet. BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com. This is a copy from Amazon.com, and it's I can't say enough about the book, but I'm gonna let Christy talk about her own book. But let's go and start with all the roles she's had in life, from author to pharmacy technician to manicurist, vinyasa. Did I say that right? Yoga instructor,
Yes.
certified health and life coach. Did I miss anything? 7 job man. How many?
I think so. Yeah.
So that's
Sounds about right.
that's a lot of jobs there. And another role that we're going to spend a lot of time on, and I think if I'm reading this right from your book, probably your most important role in life, mother.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, me personally, right? When I told my wife this many times, when I became a father, it changed me in a way that only parents can understand. So I'm with you on that. With all my jobs and experiences, parent is just the biggest role in my life. With that being said, we're going to start going down the lifeline. It says here you were born September 22nd, 1978, to
correct.
a young Portuguese couple, Ed and Debbie Camara.
Camara.
Woo, I said it right. Ed and Debbie still reside in Hanford?
No, they are in the 5 Cities area at the coast.
Okay, 5 Cities is like, is that Grover Beach?
Grover Beach,
Pismo?
Pismo, Shell Beach.
What did you call it? You called it the Portuguese?
The Portuguese Paradise.
Portuguese Paradise.
Yeah,
So-
to clarify, only my dad is Portuguese. My mom is a little bit of everything.
Little mix.
Yes.
Yes. But when you marry Portuguese, you're pretty much...
She's
She's
honorary
she's
Portuguese.
She's in there. So, says you spent your childhood living on a dairy farm?
Correct.
So, Hanford, Portuguese, dairy farm. Okay, white truck. Was there a white truck involved?
Always a white truck.
I love it, the white truck. I had to learn the whole Portuguese culture when I came to Kings County. I love it. But I came in, for whatever reason, I lived in the valley for a long time and didn't really pick up on the culture. I knew people would reference themselves, oh, we're Portuguese, but I didn't see the festivals and all the tradition that you do see here in Kings County. So tell us a little bit about your experience growing up in a Portuguese family.
Well, we spent quite a bit of time honoring our heritage by being part of the Portuguese celebrations each summer.
Was that Festa?
That would be part of the festas.
I said it right, folks.
Yes, part of the festas.
Kings County.
In courts, my sisters were side attendants for the queens.
And you?
I was just in the court, so that meant
Oh, I know, but you were
walking down the streets of
okay.
Hanford and other towns in 100-degree heat, wearing dresses. And
Was this separate from the Dairy?
yes,
The Dairy Queen?
Dairy Princess.
Dairy
yes.
Princess. So that's a separate.
That was a separate.
So was that a
thing.
Portuguese tradition as well, or that's just a Hanford?
No, that's part of the dairy industry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you were almost
Yes.
dairy. If it was horseshoes, you'd be there, right?
Almost. Yeah.
So I love what you said here about childhood, and you said that you were allowed to be children. What do you mean by that?
We were allowed to play, to explore the dairy, have friends over,
Sleepovers at the dairy.
sleepovers, and not worry about responsibilities except for maybe feeding the calves.
Yeah, I know
doing
there was
our
chores on the
homework.
dairy, right?
Yeah. But my comment was more or less my parents weren't like, I don't even, maybe alcoholics where they weren't functioning, and I didn't have to cook my sister's dinner at a young age.
Yeah.
I had both my parents, so there wasn't a loss in the family where I had to step up and be an adult. I didn't have to go out and pick fruit in the fields like some children do before school. Like, I
some
was
of the adult
very
pressures.
blessed to be a child, and my only jobs I had were go to school, get good grades, play, and just enjoy my childhood.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Shout
We were
out to
alive.
Ed and Debbie for letting the girls be girls. I'm a firm believer in that as well. And I know that not everybody has the luxury. And it seems like the way you share that is with like this strong sense of gratitude. Like you
Absolutely.
recognize that
Yeah.
that's not always the case.
My parents taught me a great work ethic, but unlike some children, I didn't have to get up early in the morning and go and work before school or after school.
Was this the case for some of your classmates or people you knew?
Not necessarily, but I know it affects.
Yeah.
It exists, and it's affected a lot of people for years and years, and that's just how they know life. So
Yeah.
it's like little tiny adults having to work, having to cook for their siblings, having to
Adult
make sure they
pressures.
get to school. Yeah, worry about the safety of their siblings, and I didn't have to. I knew I was always safe. I knew I
Yeah.
was always taken care of. I knew I always had a meal.
So important. I'm sure your parents are very happy to hear that.
Yes.
And you have two sisters here.
Go ahead and try that one.
Alicia.
Alicia.
Alicia. And who's your second sister?
Courtney.
I should have went with the easy one. I should have said Courtney and your sister. So what's the age difference?
I'm the oldest. Alicia's 2 years younger than me, and Courtney's 5 years younger.
Okay. And being the oldest, did you feel like you had any pressure to like make your way in the world? It's like I always feel like the first child is like the experimental one. Like, oh, we got that right, and we didn't get this right. Let's fix it with the next one. Did you feel-
Always felt a need to do good,
Yeah.
get good grades, stay out of trouble.
And whether you like it or not, right? They tend to look up to the older
Yeah.
sister.
Maybe, but both of my sisters are really accomplished, and so I kind of look up to them.
Oh, you hear that, sisters? Shout out to Courtney and Alicia. Said it right? Alicia, yes. So it looks here that you went to Kings River Hardwick.
I did.
So I got beef with you guys. So let's get it out
You
now.
must be a Kit Carson kid.
I know, worse. Okay, so here's my beef with Kings River Hardwick. All of you Kings River Hardwick people out there. I would wake up on a foggy day, a beautiful foggy day, knowing full well that there was a really good chance I was going to have a foggy day schedule. So I would turn on Channel 18, local reference for you guys watching in other states, PBS, right? And on the bottom of Sesame Street, you would see a list of schools scrolling underneath. And you waited for your school to come up, right? And then we would see, it was scrolling, Kings, River, and then right when we were celebrating, and then Hardwick would jump in. because I went to Kings River Elementary in Kingsburg. Now you know me. You know me now, huh? So I'm sure that Kings River Hardwick kids were very upset at us when we got the foggy day. And we got upset when they got it because it was always a false alarm. It was the third letter. Is there an H? Does it say Hardwick? So I'd never been to the school. I didn't know where it was, but I was well aware of the existence of Kings River Hardwick because of foggy days. So tell us about your experience there. It was a K through 8?
I went to school there, kindergarten through 2nd grade.
That's right.
And then after that, we moved to Layton. We had a dairy at the time, and so my dad sold the dairy in Kings County, and we moved over to Layton. So I went to Layton Elementary from 3rd to 5th grade.
Okay.
And then from there, I moved to Tillamook, Oregon for 4 years.
Tillamook. And if we were to reference that with the cheese,
the cheese,
it is, right? Okay, so everybody knows Tillamook cheese. Yeah. So you were in Oregon from, I believe, till 93, right? From 6th grade to freshman year?
The end of my freshman year.
And you mentioned in your book that during that time, well, I don't remember. I want to clarify if it was Hanford or Oregon or a combination of the two, where there were some trials and tribulations that kind of chipped away at your self-esteem.
I mean, we could chalk that up to my whole life. I don't think we'd really have to narrow it down to a county.
Okay.
Or a city.
But, okay, was it that you had trouble fitting in Oregon? Or
had trouble fitting in Oregon.
Okay, yeah, because you left your friends. And
necessarily very welcoming to Californians.
I see. Did they have the whole stereotype that you live by the beach and that you knew how to surf?
Of course. Yeah.
This is pre-internet, by the way, guys. Yeah. We understand now that you kids
we
are
all surf, we're all tan and have blonde hair.
And yeah, well, you did come in with the blonde hair.
Yeah,
so.
I just have never surfed a day in my life.
Was that a common question back in the Oregon days?
Yeah.
And so that was an experience there. And then I believe right around 9th grade, you come back to Hanford.
Yeah. I started my sophomore year back in Hanford.
Bullpups?
High. Yes.
Okay. And then you also mentioned, and I'll let her explain this, that she had stack cousins.
Oh.
What is a stack cousin?
So my
Matt, is it?
No, my 2 cousins, Ryan and Craig, who are going to be my dad's brother's sons.
Yes.
We were all stacked in age, and one day we took a stack picture. So we stacked from the oldest to the youngest on a beanbag. So it was Ryan, and then me, my sister Alicia, my cousin Craig, then my sister Courtney on top. Yes. And so that was cute the first couple times.
Yeah.
Then as we became older, obviously, like, we were going to stack on top of each other. So we started doing lineups, our age.
Was this like an annual?
It was annual, or whenever we got together for Christmas, Easter, or whenever our moms forced us to do this. So a lot of the pictures are us just like rolling our eyes.
Like, here we go
fine,
again.
We'll do this. And but in the end, once I had my son Wyland and my cousin Ryan and his wife Lisa had their twin girls, they were only 3 months apart. So we started kind of doing stack pictures with the littles.
So, okay. So tradition lives on. Mm-hmm. So a couple other things that you mentioned during your time at Hanford High was the King's Drive-In. Mm-hmm. And for those who, it's been about 10 years now. I'm going to ask one take films. Were you guys old enough or young enough to experience the King's Drive-In right there in Armona? Did you guys ever get to go? It was already shut down by the time.
Do you guys know what a drive-in is?
The cars drive in. It's a giant screen. Okay, for all the new, So right now, if you wanted to go, we still have one in Madera. It's the closest, about an hour from here in Lemoore. But tell us about the King's Drive-In and your experience there growing up in high school, because that was really like nostalgic for me.
Oh yeah. So as a child, my parents would take us there to actually watch movies. We'd
watch movies.
Pizza,
she said,
pop popcorn, and get into the drive-in. And then once I started high school, that was one of our party spots. So if we heard there was going to be a keg at the drive-in, we'd pay $5 a carload and pack as many people into our cars.
And some would be in the trunk.
Some would probably be in the trunk. And go out to the drive-in to find the keg and grab our red Solo cup and
Good
have
times.
some probably Keystone Light out of a keg.
Keystone Light. Wow. In the book, she even said Goldschlager for those 90s kids out there. Remember with the little gold flakes in it? Was that the one that tasted like cinnamon?
Yeah.
Like hot,
cinnamon.
red hots?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. No, that's a bad night for me right there.
Yeah.
But I love those memories. So then you get through high school, and then periodically throughout that time, I believe, is when you started making regular visits to the Central Coast. That started at an early age? Or was that after high school?
Kind of after high school. I mean,
Okay.
we would go with my parents and like camp in our travel trailer a little bit here and there. We weren't able to get away on vacation a lot because we had a dairy, and so that's really a full-time business.
Yeah.
But when we were able to get away, we would go to Pismo Beach and spend a couple days there, or my dad would take us over in the trailer and leave us with my mom and maybe another family, and the guys would come back and run the dairy and then come back on the weekends to hang out with us at the beach.
Okay, so Portuguese paradise on the weekends, dairy work during the week.
Yeah.
So right after high school, was that when you started with the pharmacy technician position, or?
I got my license as a pharmacy technician when I was 17, so in June.
17.
Yeah, right after I graduated, the month after I graduated.
She has many certificates, by the way, in case you wanted to know. Read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about.
So I got my pharmacy technician license and started working in pharmacy, and then worked all the way up until I was pregnant with Wyland in pharmacy part-time.
Okay.
By that time, I had already transitioned to becoming a manicurist.
Okay, so let's talk about Wyland, because fell in love with this kid. I gotta tell you, reading the book. But so you're married, and then you decide to have children, and then I believe the date I have here is 2009. Let me get my dates out here for Wyland. August 26th, my sister's birthday.
Okay.
Wyland was born in 2009, and he was named after Scott Weiland
from
Stone Temple Pilots, one of my favorite vocalists. And what was life like with Wyland?
Well, it was definitely a big change to have a child, but it was also wonderful and rewarding, and I would like to think that I tried to be the best mom I could.
Oh, you didn't. You were.
Do what I thought was best and try to give my son the best childhood available to him.
No, it sounded. I love some of the visuals that came to my mind when you described, like you had. I remember you had picnics in the living room.
Who doesn't have
living room picnics? I didn't get one. Mom, what happened? No, I love you, Mom. But okay, so let's look at the Wyland hit list here. We've got Sizzler.
He loves Sizzler.
One of my favorite. Now, was it the Hanford Sizzler?
The Hanford Sizzler. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Love that place. And
kid-size steak.
All you can eat buffet.
All you can eat.
So the buffet was kind of a meal, wasn't it? Like
you
could just go with that, and then that'd be your meal.
You would just get the kid-size steak and a buffet, and I would let him pick out whatever he wanted to eat, and he was always on the slimmer side, so it didn't matter. He could eat whatever he wanted and get a couple desserts if he wanted. I just let him.
But that was his spot.
Choose. Yes, I let him have the freedom to choose whatever he wanted to eat, because of course, as a kid, you don't really have the choice to make decisions of what you want to eat every single night. So when we went to Sizzler, he got to have whatever he wanted and as much as he wanted.
Yes. Was that his birthday go-to place?
No, just like we'd go out, kind of like a date night.
Okay.
And he'd get to pick, and so his choice was Sizzler, and he just really enjoyed it. He
loved steak.
He loved steak, and
He also.
I always saw him just stand a little taller with his plate.
Well, he's independent, right?
As he looked at his food, yes, very independent.
Then you said his eyes were bigger than his appetite.
Always.
Isn't that every kid at the buffet, right? I want it all,
yeah,
or a taste of it all at least. I love buffets. Also, he was a big fan of Costco chocolate cake.
Yes, that was his absolute favorite.
And that, okay, so the Costco thing, right? I remember you sharing that you guys would do either after school visits or weekend visits to Costco, and you'd sample the food and you'd buy whatever you're going to get, and that was kind of like your time.
Yeah, usually like on half day Wednesdays.
Oh yeah, every Wednesday
to kind of fill up the afternoon. I would take him to Costco, and sometimes against his will because he didn't love going shopping, but it was a nice way for him to be able to pick out some of the snacks that I put in his lunch.
Halloween costumes.
Yeah, and his Halloween costumes, and for him just to learn what it was like to go grocery shopping and to like be on a budget and shop for things and not get everything that we needed. And then he would get a hot dog, and
oh yeah, the $1.50 hot dog.
Then he'd help me put the groceries away, and sometimes we'd go through the car wash, and he'd have to help me wash the car, or dry it off rather.
Yeah.
So it was, kind of out of necessity, but also as a learning experience that this is what we do.
This is what we do. You also like to watch Toy Story together.
Yes.
I love Toy Story.
Yeah, Toy Story.
You got a friend in me, Woody. Yes. The whole dynamic between Woody and Buzz, and then also Andy outgrowing Woody and just change, moving out of childhood. So were you guys a fan of all of the series, or just like Toy Story 1? I think they went up to 3.
I would probably say 3 was our favorite. We did go and see 4 in the theater with his father, but I would say 3. Between 1 and 3 were our favorites.
Okay. Also, he went to Kings River Hardwick, which was the school that you also went to growing up. And what do you remember about him there at Kings River? I remember you said something
about Wyland.
Wyland.
Kings River. He was a good student. He kind of stayed under the radar, so to speak.
Yeah. With the disciplinary stuff?
Yeah. He never got in trouble. He got good grades.
I heard he was a friend to a lot of people.
He was a friend, but I didn't really realize until after the fact that he was a friend to students, and one student in particular who reached out to the vice principal after this happened to Wyland and said that Wyland was his only friend, and now that Wyland died, he didn't have any friends anymore.
Wow.
I don't know how much of that was just a little boy wanting to connect with somebody else, or how much Wyland really was in his life. But ultimately, this has been not just a tragedy on me and my family, but of all the students at Kings River who have had to endure losing one of their.
Well, I would say, based on the response, the whole community.
Absolutely.
When you look, I went back and looked at some of the footage, the memorial, and everyone who showed up and who stepped up in that time. Like, this affected the whole community.
Yeah.
And it's just a testament to who he was as a person.
And
some
who
of the
our
funny
community is too.
Yeah.
Because our community
shout out to Hanford.
Yeah, really stepped up and rallied around myself and my family and the school. So it's giving shout outs to everybody, because you really know how much support you have when a tragedy like this occurs.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of comes out of the woodwork to help.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that he was pretty funny. I found myself laughing aloud at some of the things that he said, but my favorite, because I also coach Little League, and I know what it is that after every game, you want to take your team out to the outfield and have a talk, a chat, whether it's a win or a loss. Baseball, Little League is very mental, right? And so the coaches chat after the game is something that, we as coaches, like, we make sure that happens. And I recall that you had said that Wyland had a coach who was a friend of yours and had a son on the team the same age as Wyland. What was his name? Frankie?
Frankie.
So Frankie and Coach Frankie were there, and he used to make them run the bases after a game.
Run the bases and then run out to
I'm
the
already laughing.
outfield and take a knee. And Wyland looks at Coach Frankie and says, "Not this shit again." He didn't want to run the bases and go out into the outfield. And
was that a win or a loss that day?
I don't remember.
But he was just done.
He was done.
And then he had another time where I think you guys were in Pismo, and you went to a restaurant. I think there might have been a band there or something.
Oh yeah, the reggae band.
And he looks to you and he's like, "Is this age appropriate?" Or
yeah, we walked up to a brewery, and he kind of gets to the door and looks in and looks back at me and says, "Mom, is this place kid friendly?" I said, "Yeah, it's a brewery. It's family friendly." Like once we got through the brewery to the back, there was a outdoor venue, and there were plenty of other families with kids and games, and so he just saw a bar. But he saw a bar and
kid friendly.
Wasn't sure that I should be taking my, I think he was 9 years old.
He was calling you out, Mom.
Yeah, into a bar.
Oh man. Yeah. What was there any other funny moments you can think of that stick in your head?
Sometimes that kid said really funny stuff.
The Coach Frankie line is
that's classic.
Because that's like an adult complaint right there.
Yeah.
That's something I would say. And you cleverly used a lot of these memories and experiences to title your chapters. You know, like "Hey Man" and "Not the Shit Again." These are all titles. So I thought it was very creative the way you use these personal experiences and quotes to segue into another section.
Like "No More Cheese."
Yeah, no. Wait, "No More Cheese" was, the camera was on him, right? And he was done with the pictures.
Yeah, but that was the whole chapter about Tillamook cheese.
Yeah.
Tillamook, living in Tillamook and Tillamook cheese. And then it went into pictures.
So Wyland was done with the pictures?
I was videotaping him.
Oh, and you were like,
he was on the coffee table dancing to a song from The Voice. And he was just swinging around. And then he saw that I was videotaping. And he said, "Mama, no more cheese. No more cheese."
No more cheese. That kid. Okay, and so then we get to what the book kind of, this journey that was onset by an incident, a very tragic incident. For our viewers who aren't aware, because you know some of our viewers from out of state and aren't aware, Christy lost her son in the most tragic manner, and I learned a new word through this. And so I'm wondering if you could educate us on the word filicide.
I actually learned a new word too about a couple years ago, and so it's been over 3.5 years since Wyland died, and a couple years ago I learned this word filicide, and I had to look it up unknowing that this is what happened to my son. So filicide means when a parent kills their child. And I had no idea that there was such a word, let alone signs that you can look for in a person possibly on track to commit such a heinous crime.
With that being said, I think a lot of viewers and readers and just people in general would want to try to understand what would make you want to write a book about this experience and, you know, indirectly kind of relive this. So, you know, I feel like there's a strong reason and purpose behind why you decided to take this journey after that loss. Can you explain to our viewers and our potential readers of this wonderful book what your purpose was behind the writing of this tragedy?
Well, I really feel that had I been more educated on the worst case scenario that did happen, maybe I could have stopped my ex-husband from doing what he did. But I had no idea. And so, unfortunately, I can't bring my son back, but what I can try and do is share my story, share Wyland's story, in hopes to get to the people that need to hear it so that they can hopefully save their children from what has happened.
Recognize some of the signs.
Yeah.
What would you say were some of the things that, in retrospect, stood out to you about your ex-husband's behavior that maybe current viewers could look out for with their own partners?
Besides his narcissism and manipulation, especially manipulation towards our son, sort of befriending our son and making Wyland his only friend, kind of alienating Wyland and making Wyland feel that he was responsible for his father's well-being, which I saw parts of that, but I didn't know the extent of what was going on. And ultimately, his father knew that nothing would hurt me more than to take away Wyland.
And you also said that part of the reason you wrote this was to keep Wyland's memory alive. And I feel like you've been really successful in that. Can you share some of the annual things that are now happening in the local community in response to trying to keep his legacy alive, his memory?
Yeah. For his birthday every August, the Main Street Hanford puts on Wyland's birthday, and it's the Thursday around his birthday, and they've graciously agreed to pay for the event each year. So at the farmers market, when they have carousel rides, train rides, snow cones, pony rides, everything is paid for so that the children of our community can go out to the street fair, celebrate Wyland, and enjoy what they might have not been able to enjoy if their families couldn't afford to spend the day, or that evening rather.
I want to celebrate that next year.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think a lot of viewers, especially parents, would want to know is, what would be some advice you would give to someone who is struggling with the loss of a child in such a tragic way? What were some of the coping mechanisms? What are some of the mindsets you had to embrace in order to be able to just, as you said in your book, put on a bra and was it get out the door?
Brush my teeth.
Yeah, put on the bra and brush your teeth.
Well, I'm by no means qualified to give advice on what to do when you are grieving the loss of your child, because everyone grieves differently.
Good point.
So I also like to point out that each day is different. Some days I put on a bra and brush my teeth, no problems at all, have a great day, and other days my world is just crumbling and I have to muster the strength to want to go on with my day. So it's always a rocky road. What I kind of do to fuel trying to continue is keeping Wyland's memory alive and doing the things that he would want me to do or that would make him happy, like having a celebration for his birthday where the kids are able to be kids and they don't have to worry about anything. Also by educating people through my book and some of the funny stories that Wyland has given me as memories, I'm able to share with everybody in the book.
I know that you were very transparent about seeking help and going to therapy and working through some of these things. And there was this one section in the book where you talk about the first time you realized that you were also a victim. Can you share a little bit about that realization?
Yeah, I was asked to write a blog for Gifford's Law, and they were out of San Francisco. They help with domestic violence, and I'm not exactly sure. We'll have to figure that out.
But domestic violence.
Yes, it was for Domestic Violence Month, which is October, ironically.
We're in October.
Yeah, so last year they asked me to write this blog, and of course I said, absolutely, I'd love to. And then I kind of thought about it, and I was telling my therapist at the time, hey, I was asked to write this blog about domestic violence, but I don't think I'm a domestic violence victim. And my therapist asked, well, what makes you think that you're not? I said, well, my ex never hurt me. He didn't physically abuse Wyland. Obviously, he committed the crime of murdering him.
Yeah.
But my ex was never physically violent to me and never yelled at me. So my therapist had to clarify that I was a victim of domestic violence, and that there's so many different categories of domestic violence. Most of us don't even know if we're in a domestic violence situation. Yeah. I had no idea. Even a couple years after Wyland had died, I had no idea that I was a victim. So realizing that, and I try not to get hung up on being a victim, because there's more action in taking that information and trying to do something about it, instead of me sulking and being a victim. But to be honest, it gets really easy to go back and forth
between the two.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the dangers when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to verbal abuse, physical abuse is so apparent. It's black and white. Did they hit you? Yes and no. But that verbal side, the manipulation, the toxicity, the gaslighting, there it is. That's very subtle.
Very subtle. It comes on slow. I had no idea it was happening. I knew something was wrong when I divorced him.
Yes.
And I knew there was apparent mental illness, and that I didn't feel good in the relationship. But I had no idea of the grand scheme of things and the labeling of domestic abuse until I was, much far out of the relationship. So I think just educating women, and I suppose men out there that are in relationships where you're being gaslit, and knowing that that's a problem.
So important. And that's why I think your book is so important, because you delve into a lot of subtleties that people miss when they're in these relationships, that when you step outside of, it becomes clear. I personally, and I shared this on my channel as well, and would share this with you, I think, once or twice. I was a witness to a lot of child abuse. It was not directly me, but it was my cousin. And, watching him go through all those things, I realized that a 5, 6, 7-year-old, I shouldn't have been seeing what I was seeing, and therefore I've been affected by it as well. My mindset for many years was, they didn't hit me, so I'm not a victim. However, having to witness such heinous acts did affect me, and has had long-term effects that I'm now working through in therapy. So I appreciate your insight. It's also kind of reinforced for me that I'm doing the right thing, and that I'm not, and this is what happens to me, maybe other people as well, is like, we feel like we may be exaggerating the situation because we don't have the black and white evidence that physical abuse leaves. And you get a lot of, get over it, or, let it go. It was a long time ago. Not realizing that it still plays a role deep within us.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is, uncomfortable to you might not be uncomfortable to somebody else. But if you're in an uncomfortable situation, obviously there's something wrong, whether it's a small percentage of badness happening or a large percentage. If you're not feeling comfortable, then there's an issue. Yeah,
just being sensitive to someone's interpretation of what's happening, rather than dismissing it or minimizing it. Oh, get over it.
Yeah, kind of, I've never walked a day in your shoes. You've never walked a day in my shoes. So I don't know what it was like growing up watching that kind of abuse.
So with that being said, I want to lead into some quotes from the book. Okay. And then you can choose to comment on them, or you can say no comment, or you can say next. Okay. Right? Because there were things that stood out to me. I was like, oh, I got to write this down. And I'm just going to share these quotes, and then you go ahead and decide what you want to say. The first one has to do with the guilt, and it was about judgment, and it really stood out to me because it's real easy to be on the outside and see a situation like this, and Wyland, your ex, they're gone. The only one left to give answers or to be questioned is Christy. And there's a lot of assumptions made about who Christy was, what was her role, what could she have done, right? Real easy to go into that. But like you said, we haven't walked in your shoes. And so one of the quotes that stood out to me is, would I like to live my life being funny instead of sad and broken after losing the biggest piece of my heart? Yes. And that quote to me was you recognizing what we might assume your life is like now and the choice that you had to make as to whether or not you were going to continue broken or move forward. Where would you say you were at in that journey now in terms of healing?
Well, it's like I said, it's easy to go back and forth between sadness, grieving, having victim mentality, to Christy, you have to continue on and do this in Wyland's honor and help save children, help save families from this happening. It would be so much easier if I didn't do anything. It would be so much easier if I didn't write a book. It would have been so much less emotion, less time spent. But what is that going to get me?
Yeah.
Or what is that, not necessarily me, I don't want to make it about me, but what good is that going to do?
Yeah.
Rather, if I don't continue to tell my story, our story, Wyland and I's story, then people won't continue to hear it and continue to know that this is a problem and that this keeps happening all the time in the media.
And so often so that it's got a name.
Yes.
Suicide.
It has a name, and I could hardly turn on the news because there's always some sort of terrible gun-related shooting, a lot of times a parent, and it needs to stop.
So this is where my admiration comes in for you. You're willing to do the hard work. And I'm sure many people have recognized and said that to you, but I wanted to make sure that I let you know, because I know so many people who need to seek therapy, who need to process and work through things to be able to move forward in life, and they refuse to do the hard work. So I want to commend you right now for doing the hard work in one of the most difficult circumstances. And I really admire you for that.
Thank you. I don't do all the hard work I should. I should do a lot more hard work and do a lot more therapy and a lot more self-care. But it's always a work in progress.
This right here is, because when you, and I think this is why a lot of people avoid therapy, you've got to relive certain parts of it in order to cleanse yourself or try to move forward. And I think when I talk to most people about why they don't seek help, it's I don't want to rehash it.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it anymore because I have to relive the pain as if it's happened to me again. And now it's like multiple occurrences of the same painful experience. You had to write in detail about the day this all went down. That had to be tough.
Absolutely. But I've learned to compartmentalize my feelings for the most part so I can get through an interview like today. But also kind of the more that that I read through it, it's still emotional, but it's obviously not like the first time I read through it. So I hate to even compare it to anything because reading a chapter about losing your child is not comparable to anything. But I would say that the more times that you are able to tell your story, maybe the easier it gets to get it out. I have a friend who lost her son the same way I lost Wyland, and she's a great friend of mine. And when we first started talking about 2 years ago, she was early in her grieving process, and she could not tell her story to anybody without breaking down. And now she's launched an amazing program and website called Pierce's Pledge. It's encouraging lawyers to ask their clients to store their guns while they're in child custody battles.
Wow. So do you know if that's piercespledge.com or .org?
Piercespledge.org, I believe.
Piercespledge.org. You guys get a chance, check that out. I'll add that. We'll edit that in because we have awesome production crew here. So guys, we'll add that in, that website. We want to make sure that's on there as well. Another quote I had here, and this one had to do with judgment. There are many people ready to pass judgment on me, even after knowing the whole story. The amount of pain and guilt I feel is endless. So spoiler alert, I already judge myself.
I was already anticipating people reading my book and making comments about what I didn't do to save my son. So I wanted to make it clear that I'm a regular person. You don't have to judge me. I'm already judging myself. And that goes to the same note as when I was researching the news articles for this book. I found news articles on myself and Wyland and what had happened, and some of the comments that people were making on social media. Why did that mom let her son go to his father's house? How could she do this? Well, for one, I'm a real person and I can go through Facebook and read those messages. And for two, do you really think I would knowingly leave my son at his father's house if I knew something like that was going to happen? I don't think any parent, any grandparent, any neighbor, whoever would leave a child somewhere if they knew something tragic was going to happen.
Yeah.
So my point in making that statement is I don't need any negative comments. I don't need any negative feedback on my book. Either you like it and you find my stories humorous or relatable, or you don't. And maybe sometimes if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, because I already lived through a tragedy every single day, and I judge myself for not continuing my job as a mother, my career as a mother, and to be able to save my son. So I already feel guilty not being able to save my son. I don't need everybody else putting in their 2 cents, because if I was there and my ex had the gun, I would have thrown myself in front of my son to save him. But unfortunately, I wasn't there.
And to your defense as well, in your book, you talk about going to court, clearly stating that there was, I believe in 2016, an incident where some statements were made, and you did take action.
I did.
And I believe these supervised visitations were court ordered, correct? It wasn't like you could just
the restraining order had already expired.
So you couldn't choose to just not.
Yeah.
Because then you risk losing Wyland from keeping him from your husband, right? Is that?
Yeah, my ex-husband. But the restraining order had already expired when this happened.
Okay,
so there wasn't necessarily
much you could do.
Court-ordered custody at that point, except what was originally from the divorce.
And I also want to share my own personal insight on experiences with people doing things that you didn't truly believe they were even capable of. And it's just for people who are out there and may not have been in any sort of situation where you've been witness to suicide or violence or any of these things. Me having witnessed, or not witnessed, but been around people who have taken their own lives and who have made drastic, violent decisions, a lot of times you assess who you have in front of you, and it feels like they're not even capable of these acts. And so I could really relate to that, having been around someone who committed suicide, and I was, a couple hours after I'd been with them. It's not like the movies. There's no clear and obvious sign. There's, and a lot of times you feel like you know them well enough to go, okay, so this person has issues, but I don't think that they're capable of taking it this far, is what I gathered from what you were feeling and assessing at the time.
Yeah.
They only show so much.
Yeah. I mean, I always worried about my son's safety.
Didn't you pick them up one time?
I did. Yeah.
Went to the house and just
I had to call the police over
and grab,
and they wouldn't let me take Wyland, and so I had to stay there until I was able to take Wyland from his father's house.
My teenage years were full of trying new things, failing, and walking away with a loss of self-esteem. I bring this up because I think one of the most important things that people might overlook is this constant struggle to self-love, to feel good about who you are as a person. I once remember hearing a quote, it might have been in the movie, about we will only accept the love that we feel we deserve. And so when we reflect back on some of the things that we've accepted in terms of treatment, in terms of manipulation, etc., I think you hit the nail on the head where you started to address there were some times where you didn't feel confident about yourself, and that culminated into accepting some behavior that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember one situation in particular that really hit me hard because I'm a high school teacher, and I see insecurity on a daily basis. But you had a passion, or at least a love, for volleyball at one point. And then you were in Oregon and you wore quote unquote normal shorts in Oregon. And then you got to Hanford and we have the fancy sporty briefs. And that alone was enough for you to say, I think I'm done with volleyball.
Yeah,
because you were uncomfortable.
I did not feel uncomfortable wearing briefs, no.
And and so I think that when we talk about not just body image, but just self-esteem in general, having a love for ourselves, that is something that we really need to practice on a regular basis at a young age with kids.
I'm still working on it. Let me know how it's working out for you.
Yeah. Oh no. Okay. You guys can't see this, but Chris, you can see all of these signs, these affirmations I have on the board. All right. I feel like
it's okay to wear briefs.
I feel like Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live. Remember Stuart Smalley? You're good enough.
Oh,
you're smart enough.
Darn it, people like you.
Yeah. And we used to make fun of that. But there's some power in that, and repeating these things about yourself. And so, I've always tried to be an advocate with my students to be, your biggest cheerleader.
That's great. Well,
usually we're our strongest critic, right?
If you're not going to cheer for yourself, who is?
Who's going to jump on your side? And so, just saying, I'm cheering you on.
Thank you.
The whole way, because you've given me so much.
Thank you.
In terms of insight, transparency. I'm in the middle of working through therapy, and I reference struggles and courage like yours when I'm in there and say, okay, well, let me be truthful and get through what I need to get through. So you're already affected. Even if you're not sure if it's changed one person, you've changed me by reading your book.
Thank you so much for saying that.
Absolutely. Is there anything else before we sign off here that you'd like to share about Wyland, about your book, about your journey that you think would be valuable to viewers, or you just want to express publicly?
I feel like I made it clear in my book, but I can't supported. My family's been supported from the community, from strangers that have reached out with messages on Facebook in support, even before or after reading the book. There's such a great area of support. I don't even know how to say this.
Well, you did say it in the book this way.
Yeah, that it makes it a little bit easier to get through the loss when I have so many people holding me up.
Yeah.
The day it happened, as well as the celebration of life, people stepping up and paying for things, and then continually supporting through Wyland's birthday. I can't imagine other parents who have lost children and don't have the amount of support that I have. I don't know how they can continue on, because it's, I would say, the worst loss anybody could ever face, and to not be able to have the support from my family, friends, and community and strangers, it's one of the reasons I can go on. And to fight for the fact that the monster will never win. Wyland's dad is not going to beat us. We're going to win.
Damn right, Christy. Absolutely. Another thing that I took away from these wonderful stories of support was that good people are everywhere.
Good people are everywhere.
And I think that we don't say that enough. And when you look at a tragedy like the one that you've endured, you know, it's real easy to say, oh man, terrible things happening all over the world. Look at this example. Mm-hmm. And through your book, you've turned this into an example of courage, hope, and for me, a renewed hope in humanity.
Thank you.
Because for every monster out there, there are millions of people like me and you who love on others, who are willing to give, who are willing to do the hard work. So viewers, listeners out there, I want you guys to understand there are good people everywhere. And media is not always going to share that story because it's not the big, exciting story you want to hear. But they're everywhere. And if you're not sure about that, talk to Christy. Check out her book.
Help. Ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to go to therapy. It's okay to talk to friends, to meet people, and maybe okay to talk to strangers in a store, because maybe you're going to make them feel helpful that day. Feel like anybody who's in need, it's okay to reach out.
Promised myself I wouldn't cry. Can I still be funny after my son's murder? Christy Camara. Her story, guys, you got to get this book. If you're seeking hope, if you're seeking guidance, if you're in a struggle right now and you're not sure how you're going to get through it, get some insight from someone who's been through it, who's going through it. It's okay not to be okay sometimes. It's okay to ask for help. Good people are everywhere, and we've got one with us today here who's willing to share her pain so that we can all benefit from it. Christy, we thank you for being here today. You can get this on Amazon. You can get this at barnesandnoble.com. Reach out today to get Can I Still Be Funny After My Son's Murder? Christy A. Camara, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. My name is RobLive, and as we always end it, love, peace, and chicken grease. We out.